Godinez, licensed professional counselor. The host of We Need to Talk with Chris Godinez on every Sunday at noon Pacific and 3 p.m. Eastern. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions stated herein are mine and mine alone. They do not represent the ACA, the APA, or any other therapist for that matter. And I would like to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. I will put that down in the description. They're an online counseling company. They are international, so if you're overseas, you're in England, France, Italy, whatever, can't get into a good therapist, they will hook you up with somebody here in the US. And of course, there's the time change, so you'll have to figure that out with your therapist, but they can do that. And if you're in a small town and you don't like the therapist that's there because it's a small town, you don't want people knowing your business, they shouldn't because of HIPAA laws, but you don't like the therapist there, they will hook you up with a licensed professional counselor in your state, master's level or PhD level. So that way you don't have to drive forever to go get a different therapist. You can just get online, fill out some questions. BetterHelp will hook you up with a therapist in your state. And the beautiful thing of it is, you don't like the therapist, you just go on, say, I don't like the therapist, and answer a few questions, and they will set you up with somebody else. And I've gotten a lot of really good feedback. People are really enjoying their therapy, getting good stuff out of it. So that makes me very happy. So betterhelp.com/Chris Godinez. Yay! Okay, let's dive into the questions. Okay, I tend to dissociate when I look in the mirror. How can I do self-esteem mirror work when I dissociate? Okay, so if you're dissociating when you're looking in the mirror, don't look in the mirror. So just don't look in the mirror. What you can do are several different things. You can leave little post-it notes everywhere with positive sayings that you read out loud. You know, I am beautiful, I am smart, I am kind, I am good enough, I am, that stuff. Or you can say things out loud to yourself. You know what? You're a good person. I really like you. I really enjoy your company. That kind of thing. You talk nicely to yourself. You don't have to look in the mirror. And this happens from, dissociation can happen because of the abuse. Absolutely, because we've been yelled at, screamed at, harmed, etc. And it was never okay for us to be us. So we tend to dissociate when we start doing that cognitive dissonance, when we start challenging the incoming thoughts are not matching what we're saying to ourselves and we start dissociating. So yeah, so it's okay to not look in the mirror. You don't have to. If it's too painful, if it's too uncomfortable, if it causes you to dissociate, don't look in the mirror. So oftentimes when people tell me they hate looking in the mirror or they have a hard time looking in the mirror, not because of dissociation, but because of what they tell themselves, because the inner critic is just so mean and nasty. So basically, you got to shut that inner critic down. Thank you for your thought. Shut the bleep up. Why? Because I say so. You say so. I say so. I am good enough. I am smart enough. I am whatever the opposite of what it was saying. Or I am beautiful. I am nice to look at. I am, because it'll say all sorts of mean things. So you do the polar opposite. So you can do that without having to look in the mirror. Just make sure you put post-it notes up so you can see them, and make sure you say those kind things to yourself throughout the day. And if you happen to catch your reflection, hey, I like that person, just real quick. Doesn't have to be a long-winded thing. So yeah, so if there is dissociation going on, or if there's just, it's too painful to look in the mirror, then post-it notes wherever you are, just to remind you throughout the day who you are. And who you are is a good, beautiful, wonderful, shining beam of light, not what our abusers told us we were. So yeah, so remember that. So remind yourself of who you are throughout the day. It doesn't have to be in a mirror. You can just remind yourself, but do take the time once an hour to say something nice to you. Do it. It's good for the soul. So yeah. All right. I hope that answered the question. I feel the aftermath of abuse in my nervous system. I was trying to forgive to heal, but I still shake inside. Any thoughts? So post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't just disappear just because we've forgiven the person. It doesn't. My dad has been dead and gone for 25 years now, coming up on 25 years. So even though he's dead and gone, occasionally I will have something trigger me and I'll have a panic attack, or something will remind me of the abuse and I'll have a panic attack. So it's not a cure-all. It's not a magic bullet. The forgiveness part is for us. It's so that we can move them out of our minds, don't allow them to live rent-free up here, evict them, put the blame, shame, guilt, whatever, back on them. Do not accept their energy, their nastiness, their whatever. It's about us healing ourselves, but we're always going to have PTSD. That doesn't just poof disappear just because we've forgiven them. It doesn't. Like I said, I mean, I've rarely think about my dad, but when I do, you know, like a trigger or something, like something's really triggered me, yeah, I'll have a panic attack, you bet. So basically, it's working with a good trauma therapist to work through those triggers, to figure out what the triggers are, and to work on letting go of the abuser. So a goodbye letter is great for letting go of the abuser, like like goodbye, like we're done. Like I'm not interested in thinking about you, seeing you, hearing about you, nothing. Goodbye. You know, so dear whoever the abuser was, the good, the bad, the ugly, the horrific, at the very, very end, you tell them whatever it is you need to say to them. You know, it could be 27 pages of go screw yourself, you know, or whatever it is you need to say. So the good, the bad, the ugly, and at the very end, say whatever you need to say, and then take your power back. I am kicking you out of my head. You don't get to live rent-free up here one more second. And if you pop up in my head, I'm going to do thought stopping. Wow, isn't that interesting? You showed up. Guess what? You're not welcome. Goodbye. Not playing. Not inviting you in for coffee. Bye-bye. We're done. Bye-bye. We're done for this lifetime. We're done for next lifetime. We're done for the next 20 lifetimes. I never want to see you again. Goodbye. Goodbye. I do not wish you ill. I don't wish you anything. I wish you gone. Bye-bye. Trot it out to the barbecue. Read it out loud once. Burn it. And then you just keep working through inner children stuff, Catherine Taylor, Inner Child Workbook, work through the inner child, work through CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker, Chapter 3, putting it all back onto the abuser. So yeah, we're gonna have PTSD. We just are. Complex post-traumatic stress disorder means the abuse happened over and over and over again. So complex post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, it's going to be there. And forgiveness is not a magic bullet, but it is part of it. It's part of the journey. It is. But we get to a state of no longer caring once we've worked through the anger, the betrayal, the sadness, all of the emotions, the inner child, all of that. When we work through that and let them go, really, then they're gone. Does that make sense? So it's a process. So it's not a magic bullet. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a process of working through all the emotions. Remember, anger is the bodyguard of the softer emotions, hurt, fear, sadness. So you got to get through the anger to get to these to finally let everything go. So give yourself time. Get with a good trauma therapist. Absolutely. What if you transfer anger onto your therapist? How not to do that? Well, here's the thing. Transference is going to happen. So all of you therapy students out there watching these videos, listen to me now, believe me later, listen to this. Transference is going to happen. Why? Because the therapist is the safer target. Let me say that again. The therapist is the safer target, and a good therapist will recognize when transference is happening and help the client recognize what they're doing so that they can recognize their own emotion and put the anger or whatever back onto the appropriate person. CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving, Pete Walker, Chapter 3. So what happens is, think about this. When a little kid, 50-50 custody, right? And so they have to go spend those 5 days with the abusive parent, right? They come back, they start acting out with the same parent. And the same parent is going, what's going on? Well, the same parent is safe to get angry at. The abusive parent is not. So that poor little kid has probably been angry at the abusive parent, can't say anything because they're going to get punished or hurt or abused or whatever. Come home to the safer, sane parent, they're going to take it out on them because they're the safer target. That's why as an adult, as a parent, you've got to make sure your kids understand what they're doing and don't allow them to do that. Just like with a therapy such situation, you don't allow the client to continue to do that. You call them out on it gently and you help them understand what's happening. So let me give you an example. In my next book, which is about being a therapist, I talk about a transference, countertransference thing. You never want to have countertransference. So what is transference, countertransference? So transference is when the client transfers emotions onto you that really belong to the abuser, okay? Countertransference is when the clinician is triggered by something the client has said and transfers all their stuff onto the client. You don't ever want to do that. You want to have done your own therapy to the point where you know yourself and you're not getting triggered by your client. Let me just be clear on that. If you cannot get to that point, don't be a therapist. So one time I had, more than once, but the one that I write about in my book, I had a client that had an abusive mom and dad, and we'd been working on putting the anger back where it belonged. They were doing really well. They were finally accessing the anger. They were finally accessing the sadness, all of this stuff. And then the next session they came in and they just blew up. You're the problem. I hate you. Da, 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 da. You know, the whole thing. And I'm, of course, sitting there going, what did I do? I'm like thinking in my mind, wait a minute. What did we do last session? Oh, we were working on putting it back on the abuser. I wonder. So I just let them, you know, and I stayed calm because I knew it wasn't about me. And a good clinician will know it's not about them. They may have that initial, what did I do? But then when you start thinking about it, you're like, wait a minute, no, this isn't me. So I let them have their thing. And then why are you just sitting there? And I looked at them and I said, who do you really want to be yelling at? Who does all that anger really belong to? And they let out a howl and they started crying. And it turned out it was their abuser. And they were angry at the other parent for not protecting them. So, you know, that was transference. I was the safer target because they knew I wasn't going to abuse them. They knew I wasn't going to yell at them. They knew I wasn't going to abandon them. I wasn't going to neglect them. I wasn't going to, you know. And so once I asked that question, who are you really angry at? Because the level of anger here is not matching up. What's really going on? What's happening? And it turned out all of the work we'd been doing was stirring up all of that anger towards their abuser. And it had never been safe to take it out towards the abuser. And so even writing a letter to the abuser and burning it was threatening enough to the inner child to have the inner child start acting out. So really we worked through it, and I totally praised them because I said, this was incredibly brave of you. It is, because now you're accessing that anger that really belongs to the abuser, and I was the safer target. So thank you for doing that so we could get it to the right person. You know, a bad therapist would make it personal, make it about them, blah, blah, blah. No, it's transference. So clients are not going to know that they're transferring. It's usually the inner child is the one that's driving that kind of transference. But a good therapist will call it out and be able to go, who are you really mad at? Where does this anger really need to be going? What's going on? How can I help you recognize that this anger belongs to this person? And then that's what we spent the rest of the session on, was working on, okay, so all of this tidal wave of anger really belongs to mom and dad and to the parent that didn't protect you. So let's talk about that. Let's work that through. What tools do you have in your tool belt that will help you process that so you'll be able to put it back onto the abuser? Writing and burning letters. So, you know, in recognizing the anger belonged to them, not over here. Because when abuse targets get out of that abusive situation, they tend to spew anger everywhere. We just do. I mean, I was hugely angry when I got away from my mom and dad. Hugely, you know, and it took me a while to go, wait a minute, I'm not mad at the world. I'm mad at my dad. I'm mad at my mom. Hello, you know. So a good therapist will help you figure that out. So transference is going to happen. But if it's happening a lot and the therapist is not allowing or not working on with you how to recognize that you're transferring, you might want to consider getting a different therapist. So, because honestly, it's like once you teach the client about transference, that they're doing it because the therapist is the safer target than the abuser, then you give them the tools to start working on, okay, well, let's write and burn letters. Let's put everything back where it belongs, you know, and then you just keep the client on target. If the therapist is just letting you spew and not working with you on the hows and the whys, you probably need a new therapist. So, because transference is going to happen. Countertransference should never happen, ever. Because you should have done your own work first as a clinician. You should have done, listen to me now, believe me later, all you wannabe therapists out there. You should have done your own work so that all of your stuff is nailed down tight, okay? So that you're not triggered by what a client says. But clients can and do transfer their anger, sadness, whatever, onto the therapist because we are the safer target. We're not going to abuse them. There's a relationship, but it's not like a personal relationship. So there's a little bit of distance, it's a little safer, you know, that whole thing. But as soon as you recognize that transference is happening with your client, that they're transferring onto you, you call it out. Who are you really angry with? Who do you really want to be yelling at? What is this really about? Gentle, gentle. And then you help the client learn how to recognize what their emotions are and who they really are wanting to yell at, be sad with, whatever. So there it is. So as a client, your therapist should be teaching you how to recognize when you're transferring, so you can stop it yourself, so that you're not transferring all over the world, so that you're able to go, wait a minute, who does this really belong to? If they're not doing that, get a new therapist. So there is that. It's not your job, it's the therapist's job to teach you. So there we go. Okay. How long can I expect the Hoover to last? Oh gosh, I get that question a lot. So abusers tend to go through their little black book. They do. And they tend to cycle through the people that they've been with. And when they start running out of people, they'll go way back time machine to find somebody to Hoover. So yes, I have heard of Hoovers. I actually had a client 20 years later where the Hoover occurred. So it could come out of the blue. And they are so adept at doing that. It's like, just when you think you're safe, just when you think it's safe to go about your merry business, you'll suddenly get an email or a text or a Facebook IM or something from an abuser that wants to get a hold of you. No, block them. Block them like you never got it. Seriously, you don't have to, just like you don't have to attend every argument you're invited to, you don't have to attend every Hoover you're invited to. And don't let your curiosity get the better of you. So what gets people in trouble is when they go, oh, but it's been so long, surely they've changed. No, they haven't. No. Leopards do not change their spots. Do not think like that. So you want to go back and write down every rotten thing they ever did to you to remind you why you're not going to get in contact with them. Block them. Let them go. Absolutely. How are we doing on time? Okay. I've noticed a lot of people acting like they have PTSD now. What is going on? Well, okay, the last 2 years have been extremely traumatic and stressful. A pandemic is traumatic and stressful. You know, I know multiple people that have had COVID, been hospitalized, been on ventilators, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Thank God they all recovered. But, you know, it's stressful. It's stressful. It is stress. So people are exhibiting signs of PTSD. Absolutely. Different from CPTSD. Well, kind of, sort of, not really. But yeah. So, I mean, it's not abuse because of a person. It's abuse because of a frickin' virus. So, yeah, people are having short tempers. They're impatient. They're, you know, so you just talk to them. You just talk to them. What's going on? How are you feeling? How are you dealing with the stress? What are you doing to take care of yourself? What are you doing to give yourself a break? What are you doing? You know, you just talk to them. Absolutely. So yeah, there's a lot of people walking around with PTSD and they don't realize it. And the symptoms can be delayed. So PTSD from an accident or CPTSD, you know, you're shell-shocked. Literally, that's what shell-shock is PTSD. You're shell-shocked and you go for a few months and you feel fine, and then all of a sudden it all hits you. Yeah, it can be a delayed reaction. Absolutely. So don't be surprised. You leave an abusive relationship, there's been a ton of abuse, you're okay for a few months, and then suddenly it hits you. So that's kind of normal. That's kind of the way it usually goes. So, I mean, some people experience it immediately. Some people, there's a delayed reaction. Depends on the person. Okay. What do we do if a sibling is a flying monkey? So here's the question you ask yourself. If you were not related to these people, would you have anything to do with them? If the answer is no, act accordingly. It doesn't matter if it's a sibling, a stranger, a friend, a family member. If they are acting as a flying monkey for the abuser, you give them one warning. You give them one warning. Look, I want nothing to do with this person. I'm not interested. And if I find out that you're running back and telling them what my business is, you and I are done. You let them know, point blank, we're done. And then if they break that confidentiality, you be done. You be done. If you were not related to these people, would you have anything to do with them? If not, act accordingly. You don't have to have a relationship with somebody if they are damaging you. Let me say that again. You don't have to have a relationship with somebody if they are damaging you. Please take good care of you. Let them go. Go no contact. You can always warn them. You can always try to educate them. But if they're like that's who they are and they're showing you who they are and they continue to do it, go low contact to no contact. Don't let them have any access to your life. Absolutely. Do narcissists cheat and or are they always addicted to porn? Yes, pretty much. Not 100%, but 99.99999%, there's usually an addiction of some sort, either drugs, alcohol, porn, sex, something. There's some gambling. There's some addiction component to that. They almost always cheat, and the further along down the dark triad spectrum that they are, psychopath, narcissist, Machiavellian, the further they are into the psychopath type of thing, the easier the lies fly off their tongues, the more likely they are to cheat. It's just, yeah. So, yeah, if they're dark triads, definitely, for sure, for sure. And there is almost always some form of addiction component. So, yeah. My parent is using me as their therapist. I don't want or need to know all of the stuff they tell me. What do I do? Okay. Whew. Parents should never, ever use their own children as a therapist. It's not the kid's job. So if you're the kid that's being used as the therapist, like the parent is telling you all of their stuff, you tell them no. You tell them no. And you don't listen. You tell them no. And you say, you know what? You need your own therapist. Now, parents often do this to kids, like underage minors, right? So the kid feels trapped, like they don't have the right to say no or they can't say no. For your own sanity, you're going to have to. Whether you're an adult or you're a minor, you're going to have to say no. Because you don't need to be hearing this stuff. This is this is too much. It's too much for the kids. It's too much for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, parent, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know this. I'm not your therapist. It's not my job. I can't help you. And oftentimes, parents do that. The inner child inside of them does that, hoping that you're going to help them somehow, even though you're a kid. I know, it's crazy. It is. It's crazy. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to say, stop. I can't help you. Here's the name of a therapist. Go get your own therapist. I am not your therapist. I am your child. I don't want to know this stuff. I don't need to know this stuff. How about them Dodgers? And that's what you're going to have to do. Because if you don't, they're going to keep using you as a therapist, and you're going to end up with secondary trauma. You know? So yeah, you don't want that. So absolutely, you're going to have to tell them no in no uncertain terms. If you're an adult and they're doing this to you, then after you've given them the warning and they continue to do this, then you go no contact. Absolutely. Okay. Should we just remain silent about our abuser? No, of course not. So here's the thing. Abuse thrives in darkness. It thrives in silence. They're counting on that. So, and I'm not sure what context you mean. I mean, remain silent about your abuser. No, but you're also not going to go contact the next girlfriend and tell them. Why? Because abusers count on the drama triangle. A villain, a victim, and a hero. So if you go and warn the next girlfriend or boyfriend that, hey, this person is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, then the ex is just going to go, oh, they're crazy. They're, da-da-da-da-da. And now they've got the villain that they need to their hero and the victim, which is their new victim target. So, yeah, you don't ever tell the new girlfriend, boyfriend about how crazy the person they're involved with is. It's not your job because now you'll be part of the drama triangle. So, but as far as remaining silent about the abuse, no, you don't. I haven't, clearly. I've written several books on this now. So, yeah, no, you don't. Abuse survives in silence, but you also don't go finding the new girlfriend or boyfriend to warn them because it'll backfire on you. Guarantee it. Does every time. I keep telling people this, they do it, and then they're like, oh shoot, you were right. And I'm like, of course I was. I told you this would happen because I've been doing this for years. So yeah, don't warn the new girlfriend or boyfriend. What is a cerebral narcissist? Okay, so there's somatic, cerebral, hello, my brain just left, communal, grand, extroverted, introverted. So, okay, somatic is concerned with the body. So they're the ones that are very, very concerned with everything. Every hair has to be perfect. They have to be the perfect weight. They have to have the perfect muscles. They have to, perfect somatic body. Cerebral, they think they're smarter than everybody else. They really, truly do, even though they're not. You know, I mean, it's just... It's like the NASA lady that got lectured by some intern about how she didn't know what she was talking about and she should read this book. She was the one that wrote the book. He didn't realize she wrote the book. So yeah, that would be a cerebral narcissist. So yeah, they need to appear smarter than everybody else. They think they know it all. They think that they're smarter than everybody else, even though they don't have the education to back that up. You know, it's just incredible. So yeah, cerebral, all about, you know, being smart. They're cerebral narcissists. They're smarter than everybody else. Somatic is about the body. Communal is like Jim Jones. They, you know, very charismatic, get everybody going. Extroverted narcissists, grandiose narcissists, they're the ones that are like, oh, look at me, I'm fabulous, tell me how fabulous I am, you know, that kind of thing. They don't try to hide it. The introverted narcissists, the covert narcissists are the victims. They play the victims. I do this for you, you never write, you never call, you know, that kind of thing. So there that is. My voice is going. We've got like air quality issues like nobody's business right now. I don't know why. So bleh. Anyway, so I hope that answered all of your questions. If you want me to answer some questions, you can always leave them below in the comments, or you can IM me on Facebook at We Need to Talk with Chris Godinez. This week, I'm going to have Susanna Quintana on, and we're going to talk about, are you ready to date? How do you know you're ready to date? What are some things you should be thinking about if you're even thinking about getting ready to date? So we're going to be talking about that. And she's going to be sharing some of her own personal stories. And I'm not, because I've been married for 25 years. I don't even think I know how to date at this point. Oh my God. So yeah, so we're going to talk about, are you ready to date? And some things to think about, some things to be concerned about, some things to be aware of. You know, she's going to share her own personal stories, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I want to thank my sponsor, BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/Chris Godinez. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will talk to you on Sunday. Bye.